DAOs aren't really talked about. I think you hear about them a lot if you're around the kind of blockchain development space, or the crypto space. But if functionally, the easiest way to think about a DAO, in my opinion, is to think of it as a digital cooperative. And so a DAO is a group of people who are working together and making decisions, managing a shared treasury, typically at scale, and decentrally. So, they can be remote, they can be in different time zones, different countries, whatever the case, and they're able to collectively work together. And so DAO just stands for decentralized autonomous organization. And I think the key thing that I'm always trying to, or at least highlight, is that a DAO can be any type of organization. So any organization, all the way from your basic LLC or C corp to a trust or a foundation or a community fund. Typically, owning and voting coalesce in DAOs in the sense that you pay to play, right? Or at least that's how traditional DAOs kind of work. So you, by contributing typically, funds or even activity, right, you get a token. And by owning that token, that give you rights to whatever is collectively owned by that group. And so whether you pay in or whether you contribute action, you'll earn your tokens. And by holding those tokens, depending on how your DAO is set up, some do one token no matter what you contributed. Others do weighted kind of tokens, and so the more you contribute, the more your tokens are weighted, or you get more tokens, right? That gives you more voting power. And so there are different ways that groups have kind of come together to figure out this idea of ownership and voting. But typically around the token idea, it's that you have a fractional representation that identifies you as a holder of whatever shared asset or treasury that's being managed. For most people, when they think about a coin, they're thinking of valuation of a cryptocurrency. It's fluctuating, it's going up and down. Whereas for a token, that might be a part of it, right? The token might have a valuation depending if it's a popular group or however the tokenomics are set up. But for most part, a token isn't about speculation, right? You don't hold a token in order to hopefully have, the valuation of that token go up and down, right? You hold this token again as representation that you have ownership of something, right? And so you don't want to think about it as a coin, right? And so calling it a token in that way, I think, kind of keeps that separation a little bit more clear. Culturally, historically, there have always been ways that marginalized people have come together, particularly around economic, crises or disparity. And so, it's easy for all of us to always know, well, if we all chip in, right, if we all put a little bit in the pot, we have something to circulate around ourselves. And so, interestingly enough, when you think about, let's just say the Caribbean, right, and susus, or in Ethiopia, I might mispronounce this, but adirs, and stokvels in South Africa. These are all cultural reminiscences of what kind of DAOs operate on at a base fundamental level, which is a group of people collectively pooling assets in order to purchase, in order to invest, in order to create savings for themselves, right? And so I think that the lineage of cooperative history amongst Black people, particularly in the US, is very noted. I mean, W.B. Du Bois believed that economic cooperation among Black people is by far the most successful effort in which they've had to better their condition in the United States, right? And I think that overall, historically, we've needed these systems. We needed to put our resources and economic power together in order to just survive in this country, right? There are racist policies. There are things that are meant to strip Black folks, marginalized folks of their dignity. And one of those things is economic power and economic mobility. The basis of what most of what we consider society to be, the ability to, make purchases, engage in commerce, buy a house. All these things have been withheld from us or outright taken, right? Outright stolen. And so we've always had to kind of come together and figure out how are we going to do this. I believe the Federation of Southern Cooperatives, which was founded in 1967. It was, I think, the largest sustained Black-led cooperative federation in U.S. history. It lasted for decades. And so we need to get back to that. We need to get back to this idea that we have historically examples of us coming together to pool our resources and to collectively manage them. But we need something new for the future, right? And that's kind of what I'm building here with Endow, which is that, there should be an ability for people who want to engage in this kind of collective economic commerce to be able to do that, but with the tools that exist for the, modern 21st century. And so DAOs have come out of this, crypto development space, and they're allowing people to manage assets at scale. And in my mind, I believe that that should still be available, for the everyday average common day person. They just don't know about it. And so getting more education, getting people to really understand that this isn't new. This is a continuation of something that we've always historically have done. We just have to, shine it up a little bit, give it a jetpack, make it look a little cooler. And I think it'll all come together. That's normally how the groups go, right? Someone comes in, they have a big bag, and they say, hey, look, I'll give you all this money, but then they want control, they want power. And I think for organizations to really, sidestep that, and DAOs are perfect, because DAOs operate on things like smart contracts, right? Where you can set the thresholds of governance, you can set the rules, right? I mentioned earlier how tokens don't have to be per contribution, right? So whether you give $1 million or whether you give $5, every token is weighted the same, right? And so your vote counts just as much as the next person, no matter what you contribute. So you have that level of democratic setup. And I think that ultimately the decisions just need to be made beforehand, and that the decisions around how people are entering are able to enter and what that comes with. And so that people who do have outsized influence maybe don't come in and strangle or control what's happening with the group. And so governance is always something that is constantly mediated. It's reinterpreted. It's something that has to evolve. It's never static. I think a lot of groups fail on the governance side because, even with the technology, it still comes down to people. It still comes down to working with, different types of people, different types of groups. And so your governance is probably the most important thing. It's key, and it's probably something you're going to constantly revisit and have to revisit. The technology doesn't take away from that. It just provides better opportunity to do that, and know that what you're working on can be adhered to, again, across a large group of people. I think the most powerful thing I can say is that it's just the upgrade for something that we've been doing for a long time. I'm kind of excited to be in this time where this upgrade is possible now, right? Again, collective ownership and cooperative ownership, all those things have hundreds, if not thousands of years of history behind them. But I think that we now live in a time where the infrastructure, technological, legal, and otherwise, are able to actually support those things at scale in a way that essentially, I won't say it wasn't possible, but it was very hard to do. It's very hard. It took a lot of time, energy, coordination. The beauty of technology is that that coordination has now been condensed into our cell phones, right? They're at the reach of our hands. And so DAOs, I think, are the future of organizations. And so I think that as we think about how organizations are built and run going forward, I think DAOs are going to be something that are looked upon very closely to determine, again, how can we use this kind of vehicle or technological tool for our needs as it comes down to organizations, collective management of assets, and things like that.